Hey everyone, it's your old anatomy professor Becky. I know you're starting to talk about shock, and there's a couple items that we can review from anatomy class in this regard. So basically, you need to keep in mind that shock has to do with the cardiovascular system. And so we're going to see issues either with the pump, which is the heart, or the pipes, our blood vessels, particularly the arteries. When you think about shock, the key thing to remember is that we're dealing with not getting enough blood flow to organs. You'll hear terminology like the organs are not being perfused. And so, what you have to keep in mind is that when we talked about cardiac output, we were interested in the heart's ability to actually push blood throughout the vasculature. And if you focus down here on this bottom left image, you can think about both the pump and the pipes in this case. So the average blood pressure at the aorta would indicate how much pressure the heart is able to produce. If the heart is failing, that pressure might be lower, right? The cardiac output is being lowered. And then you would have to picture this whole chart getting kind of the line being depressed. Now, if you think about perfusing a tissue or an organ, we're talking about things at the capillary level. Is there enough blood pressure to fill the capillaries in our organs? So if the heart isn't working properly and that initial blood pressure is decreased, then the blood pressure at that capillary bed will be decreased as well, and that organ may not get enough oxygen or nutrients. The other way that you could bring this line down and decrease the perfusion of our organs would be if something happened in this artery section, right? So the main thing that you might see there is if the arteries expand, you can kind of have this, you develop a low blood pressure. It's kind of maybe artificial is not the right word, but a hypovolemia, a low blood volume. The volume hasn't decreased, but the blood vessels themselves have increased the diameter, and so the volume appears lower or seems lower to the body. The classic example of this is going to be something like anaphylactic shock. And the only thing I want to remind you here is that our second step in the inflammatory process is vasodilation. And so when you're talking about anaphylactic shock, you have a system-wide, a body-wide vasodilation where basically your arteries are going to seem larger and the volume drops. When the volume drops, the pressure drops, and you no longer get the perfusion through those capillary beds. All right, have fun learning about the many different types of shock. There's more than you probably thought.